Hello, everybody. This is lecture 8, which is going to be composed here on um, Tuesday evening, the 21st of July, around, goodness, 10 o'clock in the evening. Um, I want to go over the quantity theory of money, case 3. Case 3 is an increasing demand for money and credit. And we have our 3 graphs again. And the what do we want to say here? We want to deal with them and then just quit for tonight. But I want to tell you that the concept of the demand for money, many students to monetary economics and to macro have trouble with it. And so we have a surrogate for the demand for money, namely the velocity of circulation. Velocity of circulation is the number of times a currency unit changes hands per whatever time period. So the important point to note is the velocity of circulation is used in the equation of exchange, which I'm sure you've been introduced to in your intro macro courses. And in addition to that, there always is a inverse relationship between the demand for money and the velocity of circulation. So if the demand for money is increasing, the velocity of circulation is decreasing. And if the demand for money is what? Decreasing, then the velocity of circulation is increasing. Always. There's no exception to this. And some people like to work with the equation of exchange. It has one big drawback. The results are equal proportionate changes in price, which we simply just do not see in the actual world around us. In other words, if you triple the supply of money and credit, then you're going to, with of course, output held constant, the velocity held constant, the price level, price level, yes, increases 3 times. So the right-hand side of the equation must balance with the left-hand side. So anyway, we're not going to use the velocity of circulation and the equation of exchange. Rather, I think you can master the concept of the demand for money. Very simply put, it is the amount of money you have on your person and in your checking account. So the demand for money is just that. And so if you increase your demand for money out of a given income, then you're holding more cash holdings, more surplus funds than previously, and it has implications of spending less money on goods and services. So if you increase the demand for money out of a given income, then you're reducing your participation in exchange transactions. You're actually spending less, but eventually, though, you will spend that money that you have increased on your person or in your cash balances, in the not cash balance, checking account. So we all systematically adjust the level of our cash holdings, the level of our cash balances, really without even thinking about it. And well, again, this is the demand for money. So, for example, if we are short money, if we don't have enough cash or enough in our checking account, then what do? We tighten our belt, maybe go out and get another job, And, in time, the deficiency will be overcome. So anyway, the demand for money, again, is the level of funds in your cash holdings or cash balances. That is the amount of money in your checking account and also on your person. So, and we assume in this exercise, cases 3 and 4, that the income of an individual, it remains constant, and therefore everything flows, as you will see. So, without further ado, let's go to our screen. Take a look here. I'll stop it just for a second, and there I am. Let's do the screen sharing again. What I don't know how to do, people, is to draw on the white field. And I wish I did, because I probably could actually draw the new money demand and money supply curves in 3 graphs. But we are going to use the 3 graphs again that we've used in case 1 and case 2. We have the money supply, money demand graph. We have the market equilibrium graph from macroeconomics of Apples. Then we have the quantity of loanable funds graph, which would be the graph that would present the normal rate of interest. So everyone, here we go. We're going to start, and again, I can't shift in Zoom. I don't know if it's possible. I'll bet it is, but I just don't know how. So what you're going to have to do is have the 3 graphs in front of you as you see them now, and then you're going to have to shift the curves in the proper direction to get the correct results. So I will describe what is happening. Please listen carefully, and we'll get through this. So we have an increasing demand for money and credit as case 3. So out of a given income, we're going to hold more money on our person and or in our checking account. And what does that imply? That implies less expenditure, less spending than before. So let us go to the money supply, money demand graph. Our intersection point there is M1, and the money demand is going to increase. So 0 M1 is less than the increased demand for money. Therefore, we have 0 M2. 0 M2 is greater than 0 M1. M2 is to the right of M1. M1 M2 is the change in the demand for money. So we're at M2 on the horizontal axis, of course. And now we're ready for a trick, such as we performed in the previous 2 cases. We want to take a perpendicular line segment from point M2 on the horizontal axis up to the curve that we are unconcerned with. So we're concerned in the money supply, money demand graph with the demand for money. So we take a perpendicular line segment up to the positively sloped money supply curve. And the intersection point is, we'll label point 2. And since we now have point 2, we can draw a new demand curve parallel to the old one and above it in space. So we're really shifting the demand curve out to the northeast direction. And what does that give us on the vertical axis of the money supply, money demand curve? Point 2 is associated with a higher purchasing power, and we designate this as parentheses P divided by, parentheses 1 divided by P end of parentheses, subscript 1, that's for our starting off point where the two old curves intersect. And then for purchasing power of point 2, we have beginning of parentheses 1 over P, end of parentheses, subscript 2. The purchasing power of money at point 2 is greater than the purchasing power of money at point 1. And we know that since 1 over P has increased in value in our graph, we know that price, mathematically speaking now, has to decrease. So before we even get to the price of apples in the second graph, we know what's going to happen. And again, with the second graph, we make the assumption that the pricing behavior of apples is indicative of the pricing behavior of most goods in the economy when the demand for money changes. So everybody, we go to the second graph, and again, we're increasing the demand for money. That means we're adding to our cash holdings, cash balances, either on our person or in our checking account, out of a given income. Key assumption here. If income is the same and we hold more money, then we're going to spend less money on apples and other goods and services. Now, eventually, in time, that money will be spent, but since we've chosen to hold on to it, we're indifferent when we do spend it. That's why we have surplus funds, don't you see? We spend less on apples, and so the intersection of the two curves in the graph that you see for apples, we'll designate that as point 1, and we have Q1 on the horizontal axis underneath it. Then we're going to spend less on apples, so we're looking for a number, Q2, to the left of Q1. 0Q2 is a lesser number than 0Q1. And so we've got Q2 on the horizontal axis to the left of Q1. We use our trick to take a perpendicular line segment up to the curve that we are unconcerned with. Well, everyone, we're talking about less expenditure, less spending on apples. So that means we're talking about demand. We're concerned with demand. So we take our perpendicular line segment to the curve we are unconcerned with, which would be the blue positively sloped supply curve of apples. Now we intersect the supply curve with the perpendicular line segment, label the intersection point 2, and then, don't you see, we can find the price for point 2 on the vertical axis. We notice that the price at point 2 for a bushel of apples is less than the price of a bushel of apples at point 1. And this is consistent with our finding in the first graph, the money supply, money demand graph, of purchasing power of money increasing. If 1 over P is increasing, then P assuredly must decrease. And that's exactly what we have shown in the second graph. We want to show put an arrow that shows a decrease in consumption on the horizontal axis and a decrease in price, an arrow there on the vertical axis, showing the decrease in price. So first and second graphs have been explained, and the third graph is the nominal rate of interest graph, meaning it's the quantity of loanable funds graph. And our intersection point there is interest rate I subscript 1. And we have underneath point 1 on the horizontal axis QLF1, quantity available funds, supplied and demanded, 1. And the exercise, case 3, calls for an increasing demand for credit. So we're looking for a number to the right of QLF1, namely, we'll call it QLF2. The difference between the two is the change in credit. The demand for credit is increasing. And we are to the right of QLF1 on the horizontal axis. We're ready to perform our trick again. Take a perpendicular line segment up to the curve that we are unconcerned with. Well, in case 3, we are concerned with the demand for credit curve and unconcerned with the supply of credit curve. So we take a perpendicular line segment up to the positively sloped blue line. It intersects, and that's point 2. And at point 2, the rate of interest is higher than at point 1. So overall, an increasing demand for money, which is case 3, demand for money and credit, shows what? An increasing purchasing power of money in the first graph, the money supply, money demand graph, as the demand for money increases. And then in the second graph, the price of a bushel of apples decreases. This is consistent with the result in the first graph. What we're doing is consuming less apples, spending less of our income on bushels of apples. And therefore, if everybody else behaves in the same way, pretty much, the price of a bushel of apples will decrease. And it is. The price of apples, parentheses, P over 1, into parentheses, subscript 2, is less than parentheses, P over 1, into parentheses, subscript 1. Price has decreased. And again, it's consistent with our result in the first graph. And then, of course, in the third graph, the increasing demand for credit has given us a higher rate of interest. So interest rate I subscript 2 on the vertical axis there is more than the interest rate at point 1. So interest increases, prices decrease, purchasing power of money increases. And this is case 3. Now I should add about case 3. It's really difficult to see the demand for money changing. Everybody knows the money supply is increasing tremendously right now in the U.S. But we don't see the demand for money changing. And believe me, it's really increasing. We have firms out there that have interest payments and principal payments that have to be paid. And so if they don't have the cash on hand, if their profits are so low because of the coronavirus, for example, and then they'll have to go to the money and capital markets and borrow the money. So the demand for credit has increased. And then we have the demand for cash. And again, we have interest payments to make and what else? Principal payments to make. But also if, for example, we want to spend more money, and some people who are doing this, investors perhaps, will want to do it, take advantage of what has been the low prices in the equity markets, then they will want cash too. In this equity market we've come through, in which we've had big drops in the Dow Jones average and S&P 500, only to be followed by big swings upward. if you buy the dips, especially in March and April, then chances are you have a very sizable profit right now. So this is called bottom fishing, and I described that in the writing assignment number 1. Then to the date of the article was April 27th. So even in bad times, the profit opportunities present themselves, and this is important for us to know. So with that, I think I've covered case 3 here. Again, case 3 is difficult to see in the actual world. One story on 9/11, a lot of people didn't have enough cash to get home, and they did a no-no, usually it's a no-no, to borrow money from their compatriots, those their colleagues they work with. And but the circumstances justified it. And don't you see, we could see the demand for money changing there. And the September 12th was a day off for everybody, but on the 13th and beyond, people brought more money with them than they previously had done before 9/11. And this is because they feared another untoward incident and didn't want to be caught short. So anyway, the demand for money is certainly something we have to consider in our price theory. It's part of the quantity theory of money. And again, the quantity theory of money, if we add that to our price theory, we wind up with a full theory of price. What we learned in microeconomics and what we learned in the quantity theory of money. So thank you very much. Goodness, I didn't tell that joke. Let's see if I can find it. This comes from Cornelius Duran. Cornelius, thank you for the joke. And I'll leave it to your colleagues to determine whether it's funny or not. A mathematician, an accountant, and an economist apply for the same job. The interviewer calls in the mathematician and asks, what do 2 plus 2 equal? The mathematician replies, 4. The interviewer asks, 4 exactly? The mathematician looks at the interviewer incredulously and says, yes, 4 exactly. And then the interviewer calls in the accountant and asks the same question. What do 2 plus 2 equal? The accountant says, on average, 4 gives 4. Try it again. On average, 4, give or take 10%, but on average, 4. And then the interviewer calls in the economist and poses the same question. What do 2 plus 2 equal? The economist gets up, locks the door, closes the shade, sits down next to the interviewer and says, what do you want it to equal? What do you want it to equal? Very good. So thank you, Cornelius, and it's a good one. So, all right, so I'm going to end this lecture now. Thank you very much. Lectures 7 and 8 are going to be put on the Blackboard tonight, and see if I can end the meeting. And I thank you for your attention. Remember, the writing assignment number 1 is on the Blackboard. Okay, so here we go. End the meeting.